and burn.
Hey everybody. So this video here is a little odd. It's just, I saw this, this was released via the Access Media a couple days ago. I'm sure I've put it up on the screen. It's indicating that HMV is trying to make some kind of a comeback by opening mini stores inside of Toys R Us. I mean, first off, nobody wants HMV back. They were the biggest thieves on the planet. Like, I can't stress how much they overcharged for all of the music that I was forced to buy there back when I was a kid. And now they're under some misguided notion that we want them back. In the age of Spotify, nobody wants to pay $45 for some bullshit CD because HMV decided to put an HMV import sticker on it. Which, just for the record, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, when you didn't have a choice but to buy physical music, HMV would park these nonsense little HMV import stickers on things in order to jack the price up by at least $15, $20. I know they did that when my buddy bought System of a Down's first one at the HMV in the Oshawa Center. They put an HMV import sticker on it. And of course, there it was. Instead of being $25, $30, which in circa 1999, 2000, was an arm and a leg in the first place, he ended up paying like $45, $50 for it. Like, for System of a Down, who would go on to become one of the biggest bands in like the whole nu metal thing, and you could find their records everywhere for like $15 a few years later, which makes absolutely no sense. And my first Misfits collection, the Collection 1 CD, where is it? I should pull it up because it's super fun to pull this shit up. They tossed an HMV import sticker on this, and I ended up paying like almost $50 for this. Now, just so in case anybody doesn't know, HMV like to screw over their customer base, especially people like me who are into things like this, that at that point, I mean, back in like the mid-90s, the Misfits didn't sort of have the hot topic appeal that they do now. And so they were like, whoa, this underground punk band. And so I paid like $50 for this exact CD that I'm holding here. I've had this since like 1995 or 1996. And all the HMV import stickers meant was that instead of it being printed, say, somewhere locally, wherever you were from, like for me in Canada, or at least in Ontario, a lot of CDs were printed in Mississauga. But no, when they put an HMV import sticker on it, it just meant that it was printed in Quebec or something. And so therefore the CD had to travel that much further to get to the store that you bought it from. So that justified HMV jacking the price up by at least $15, $20, which of course is nonsense. One of my buddies back in high school, Ellis, he figured out how to steal from HMV. He was really tall, and back then, like, hip-hop culture dictated that you had to have, like, a baseball cap on, and it had to be, like, sitting on top of your head. You know what I mean? And then you had to have, it needed to be a starter cap, too. And you had to have the starter tag hanging off of it, preferably in plastic, to keep the starter tag perfect. And so because of this, he was able to set a couple cassettes on the top of his skull and then put the hat on top and then walk out, clearing the security things that they have at the front of the store. Now, I always felt bad about this, so I couldn't steal music because I felt like I was ripping the bands that I loved off. And unfortunately, it wasn't until a bunch of years later that I ended up becoming friends with somebody who was doing a lot for the Relapse Records street team in Toronto, which just meant like at that point you're part of a label street team. They'd give you stickers and shit, and you'd go around enhancing public property with them. And he told me that somebody at Relapse told him that getting money out of HMV was fucking damn near impossible for smaller independent labels. So the whole time, I didn't want to steal from HMV because I felt like I was ripping the bands off. But as it turns out, the bands that I loved weren't seeing any of the money in the first place. So now I just feel like a jackass for not stealing from HMV. And it's funny because HMV was the yesteryear equivalent of what Spotify is doing to bands now. HMV would screw over small bands and small labels, much like Spotify screws over, well, all bands and all labels, pretty much, unless you're Taylor Swift. If you're Taylor Swift, you're making money. Everybody else, you'll be, like Weird Al said, he had like millions of streams, so he was able to afford a sandwich. So that's what HMV was like back in the day. So nobody wants HMV back. Putting them inside a Toys R Us is just as cockeyed as Zellers here in Canada attempting to make a comeback by being placed in the Bay stores. It makes no sense, and I know most of my viewers are American, so they're not going to get that reference. Zellers was a Canadian chain akin to Walmart. They're gone now, and they attempted some backwards attempt to make some sort of comeback by... Who cares? It didn't work. But yeah, that's it. I just wanted to complain and say how HMV were complete and total shit, and nobody gives a fuck if they make a comeback, especially not in 2024 when most people will just use Spotify, or they'll order whatever it is directly from the band themselves. So yeah. So like always, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and God willing, you hated HMV just as much as I did. If you didn't hate HMV as much as I did, that's probably because you didn't really shop there. If you did shop there, you would hate them just as much as I did. I'm gonna go. Thanks for hanging out. Bye. Or whatever. I don't know. I got awkward at the end. Who gives a fuck? See you around.